prophets. So in the 6th century prophets, you have Ezekiel, Daniel, Haggai, and Zechariah. They are the 6th century prophets. And that means they basically prophesied during the time of Persian Empire, right? So you have Egyptian Empire, then you have Assyrian Empire, then you have Babylonian Empire, and then now in the 6th century, you have a Persian Empire that we have to look. I mean, here is a chart given there. What are the nations that are part of this Persian Empire? It is given for you to look into that. Some, maybe some of the names that are mentioned in the Bible, where it comes, you can look into that, right? Okay. Now, coming to the first person, first prophet, we need to look into Ezekiel. So we are going to look at a few history of Ezekiel, all right? And so that is, and then, my home computer has got a trouble. Okay, so we look at that one. Now, if you look at the historical background, yes, it is simply again Jewish history. So I'm not going to repeat everything that we looked at already. For example, Assyria, what are the kings? What are the kingdoms? Dates. Now, you can look at that. I'm not going to read them. Babylon and major people, Nebuchadnezzar, right? These are all important figures when you look at them. And then you have I have a little trouble with my computer here. Okay, about Nebuchadnezzar. These are all you know. Jehoiachin, we read about Jehoiachin, right? He was there only maybe for 3 months, and then there was issue with the Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar came and invaded, right? And now he had to come to exile, right? We also learned about Jeconiah or Coniah, right? This is maybe important for us to know. While in exile, Jehoiachin endured many years as a political prisoner, right? It is important to know Jehoiachin had another 2 names, Jeconiah or Coniah, because this guy is so famous, right? This guy is so famous. Why it is so famous? Because there was a curse upon him. And that curse is that your son will not be ruling Israel anymore, right? So if Jesus Christ was born in Davidic line, the question is, how come, okay, how do we explain Jesus' dynastic right? And the main issue that we already discussed, you have a genealogy in Matthew and a genealogy in Luke. These both genealogies are different. For example, Matthew's genealogy of Jesus Christ begins from Abraham and David and all the way to Jesus Christ, whereas Luke talks about Adam, right? Jesus to Adam. So it's two different genealogy. And now, if you look at David's son in Matthew, you will read David's son is Solomon. And if you look at Luke, you will see David's son is different person, Nathan. So why? So why these the differences are? It is important because of the curse on this guy, right? So why those different genealogy? This is something we have already discussed. Please make sure that you get acquainted with the different genealogies and why these different genealogies are really given in the Bible. It's important. Now, the next is Zedekiah. Zedekiah, he is a ruler. He ruled from 597 to 586 BC. Was a weak ruler like his predecessors. Again, same story we read about him, right? Same, he was leading the nation of Judah into idolatry, right? So we discussed until Zedekiah. Now what we need to know a little bit about Gedaliah, right? Who was Gedaliah? Because it's very rare, people don't talk much about him. Following the destruction of Jerusalem and the deportation of the population, right? That is, people were exiled into Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar appointed a pro-Babylonian governor, right? His name is Gedaliah. He was a governor, not a king, but a governor. Very short time. So please understand about him. He is spurred on by recently defeated Amorite king Baalis and smarting over the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem. And several Judeans led by Ishmael, member of royal family, conspired to slay Gedaliah along with Babylonian officials. So there were still some people left in Judea after the deportation, after the exile. And the officials left behind, they were able to assassinate Gedaliah, the governor that was appointed by Nebuchadnezzar. When forces loyal to the slain governor found out that they sought to take revenge, but the conspirators escaped and fled into Ammon, right? And the loyalists, fearful of Babylon reprisal, took the remaining Judean officials, including Jeremiah and Baruch, and fled into Egypt. So this is a story about how Jeremiah went to Egypt because there was an assassination. Not only attempt, they assassinated Gedaliah, who was a governor appointed by Babylon. So that is important. Gedaliah is an important person. The next important person is evil Merodach, or known as Belshazzar. Important person. Following the death of Nebuchadnezzar in 562 BC, Babylonian Empire experienced surprisingly rapid decline. Yes, Nebuchadnezzar was in the prime, right? He was very important, but then sudden decline because of his death. So his son was there. His name is known as evil Merodach. It's his name, right? That evil Merodach was known. An ineffectual ruler who was only noteworthy act was releasing Jehoiachin, the last king, from imprisonment and giving him a pension and a position of prominence within Babylonian court. So that's what he did. He gave Jehoiachin, the Judean king, who is now in Babylon, a prominent place. Evil Merodach was assassinated by his sister's husband. So where is he? He was a successor of Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. And he was assassinated by his sister's husband. His name is Neriglissar. Not common name, not that much famous, but that's what history says. Who then took the throne for himself. So after evil Merodach, Neriglissar comes to the scene, and he became the king, right? Neriglissar, a Babylonian king. This happens during this exile, that 70 years of period of Jewish exile. His tenure was very brief, and he in turn was followed by his ill-fated son, what is his name? Lapsi Marduk, who lasted only 1 month before beaten to death by forces loyal to the moon god Sin. Look at that one. So after Nebuchadnezzar, son Merodach, evil Merodach came. After Merodach, his sister's husband Neriglissar came to the power. It was a very brief time, right? And then his son came. His name is Labasi Marduk. He was there just 1 month. He was beaten by moon god Sin Nemonidas. That's the name of the moon god. The son of the high priest of the moon god was then placed on the throne. So kind of they wanted to make the religious moon god is the main deity in Babylon. And so they wanted to rule that way. So what happened? Factions to the factions loyal to Marduk, the chief god of the Babylonian pantheon, resisted the leadership of the direction of Nemonidas, forcing a confrontation in 550 BC. Rather than abdicating, Nabonidus went to self-imposed exile in Tema to places to placate supporters of Marduk, leaving his son Belshazzar. Finally, you have Belshazzar comes in charge of affairs of Babylon. So within Belshazzar and Nebuchadnezzar, there were like short period of rulers, kings were there. Now, as Belshazzar come, kingdom quickly deteriorated under the incompetent leadership of Belshazzar. He was not an able king. Nemonidas either unable or unwilling to intervene and did not return to Babylon, and just in time to witness the collapse of the city. And who comes? Here comes the man, Cyrus, right? He comes, defeat Belshazzar, right? Cyrus was the king of Persia, and he invades and destroys Babylon, right? So that's how Cyrus comes and invades. Daniel is prophesying about Belshazzar's end and Cyrus' attack. Everything is being prophesied. So this is what a small history that we need to know about Jewish history, right? This is part of Jewish history and, of course, part of Babylonian history. All right, what else we need to know about Ezekiel? Ezekiel name means two-way. God will strengthen or God will harden, right? That is what we know about the meaning. According to verse 1 to 3, Ezekiel was among the Judeans exiled to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar. So he was taken into captivity. Therefore, it makes him contemporary of Jeremiah, who ministered primarily in Judah, and of Daniel, who served in the Babylonian court and then later in the Persian court. So Daniel had the ability to work with the Babylonians and Persians. Like Jeremiah and Zechariah, Ezekiel was qualified as both prophet and priest. That's important information. There are very few people known as prophet and priest. It is generally held that his priestly training may be seen in the interest in the temple and its ceremonies, right? So Ezekiel is so much interested in temple. Remember, it is in Ezekiel you learn about temple in the millennial kingdom, sacrifices in the millennial kingdom. Ezekiel is the one who talks about. And the famous passage in the prophetic roll, he talks about Son of Man. Remember those words, titled Son of Man, right? He uses more than 90 times the word Son of Man in his prophecies, talking about Israel's restoration. It identifies Ezekiel as one who bears all the frailties and limitations of human race, and at the same time, a vessel that God has chosen to prophesy to the nation, that is Israel, and to the nations, right? So what he did, 70 years of his ministry, first 70 years, Ezekiel messages focused on certainty and severity of God's judgment against Judah and Jerusalem. 7 years against Jerusalem. The nation persisted in a flagrant violations of God's covenant and demonstrated all this obduracy in its rebellion and idolatry. Right now, then, contrary to the message of Judah's false prophets, Ezekiel faithfully proclaimed God's wrath. False prophets did not prophesy about God's wrath, but he did. Then, at the end of the 7-year period, Ezekiel was informed that Jerusalem was under the siege and is going to fall. To reinforce God's displeasure toward his people and to provide a dramatic, a tragic object lesson, Ezekiel revealed, right? God revealed to Ezekiel, and Ezekiel's wife would soon die. The prophecy was that, Ezekiel, your wife is going to die. It was emblematic that Jerusalem will fall. And Ezekiel was then instructed to mourn, that the nation was not to mourn the loss of Jerusalem, just as he was not allowed to mourn the death of his beloved wife. It's a quite dramatic picture. God did not allow him to mourn for his wife. By the time they came, Babylonian came and invaded, right? And then the second part of his, in like chapters 25 to 32, mainly against surrounding nations of Israel, how God is going to punish them. God's wrath is going to be against nations. So he talked about Judah, Israel, and nations. That's what Ezekiel. All right. What we will do, not going to talk about much on the, there is maybe a reference event how. I have given a chart here in the notes. You can look at that. And basic theme is divine punishment and restoration. Please go through that. That will help you if you interested in to read more of the prophecy. All right. And maybe our notes provides you basic understanding of those passages. What else? Yeah, not then. Millennial temple, how this is going to be built, and it is all the informations are taken from the Bible. Maybe a picture is given there for the millennial temple according to Ezekiel, right? If you wanted to study on that one, it is given there. Go ahead and look into that. Ezekiel chapter 40, 41, 43, 46, right? These are all explanations on millennial temple. A temple in Jerusalem is going to be built, how that is going to be, right? And even the land allotments in millennium for Jewish people, how that is going to be, even that is explained in Ezekiel. Ezekiel is so, so it's a detailed explanation of how each one is going to get the land in Israel during the millennial kingdom. That's quite interesting. All right, so that is the main thing. And another thing, interpretive issues. This is that explanation that we always looked at. The sacrifices, Old Testament sacrifices, what did it actually provide? I have explained clearly, right? Mainly they were symbolic in nature. Old Testament sacrifices were symbolic in nature. It was symbol of the ultimate sacrifice of Jesus Christ, right? So if you have any doubt, go and look into the dispensational explanation in the dispensations in the notes. Clearly I have explained, right? So this is given a little more in a simple way, and it also talks about millennial sacrifice. And now the question is, people usually ask, what about sacrifices in the millennium? What is the necessity of sacrifices in the millennial kingdom? So that is a question. Chapter 40 to 48, yes, Bible says there will be sacrifices offered in the millennial temple, right? Based on the analogy of faith, millennial sacrifice should be understood as functioning essentially in the same way as the Old Testament sacrifices, right? It was same. See, the sacrifices in the Old Testament did not have that merit in them, like sacrifice of Jesus Christ, right? It was same kind. It was a symbol of coming sacrifices. And same thing, like for example, our Lord's table is a symbol. Lord's table is a symbol of Jesus' death. We do. Just like that, millennial sacrifices is going to be there. It is symbol of Jesus' death, right? Jesus' death. Or Jesus' death, it is a symbol. We will celebrate the death. In the Old Testament sacrifices was celebrating the coming death of Jesus the Messiah. Millennial sacrifice is the celebration of already taken place. Remember, in the millennial kingdom, it is not the Lord's table that is going to be served, but it is the sacrifices that is going to be used to celebrate Jesus' death. Until Jesus comes back, we are going to celebrate Jesus' death by table, Lord's table. But in the millennial kingdom, it is again same sacrifices that talks about the one for all sacrifices, that is death of Jesus Christ. So friends, this is about the sacrifices. And please, if you wanted to have more information, you can read through. Notes are given to you, right, for your understanding. All right, any question on that? Any question on maybe sacrifices or something? If there is a question, you can ask.
You referred to Ezekiel's description of allotment of land to the 12 tribes in the millennial kingdom or in the
millennial kingdom? Yes.
In the millennial kingdom.
In the coming kingdom, yeah. See that. Remember, I said there is a Jewish priority in the kingdom, right? It is there, and it's not going to be everyone is going to be same, and not exactly like that. There is a Jewish priority because the kingdom is promised for Jewish people in the Old Testament, and what Ezekiel says, that fulfillment of the Old Testament is being fulfilled in the millennial kingdom, the coming kingdom. And he wants to explain with all the details. That's what Ezekiel has done. Yes.